When it comes to understanding female cheating signs, the first place to look is not in dramatic confrontations or obvious proofs. It's in the subtle shifts in communication. Communication is the lifeblood of any relationship. It's how trust, intimacy, and emotional connection are maintained. And when that communication changes, even slightly, it's a signal. Our brains are wired to notice these patterns, even if we can't immediately articulate why something feels off. Think about how you two used to talk. There was rhythm, clarity, ease, and a natural flow in conversation. You shared thoughts, feelings, and everyday details. You knew when she was excited, when she was worried, when she needed support. But then, over time, those patterns begin to shift, almost imperceptibly. Responses become delayed. Messages are shorter, vaguer. Questions you ask get deflected, ignored, or answered with excessive explanations that feel rehearsed. This isn't always conscious on her part. It's often a subconscious signal of emotional distraction or a need to protect a part of herself from scrutiny. Psychologically, this makes sense. When someone's attention is divided, especially emotionally, they can no longer sustain the same level of transparency. Our cognitive bandwidth isn't limitless. If part of her energy is invested elsewhere, whether emotionally or physically, the clarity and engagement she once brought to conversations naturally diminishes. It's not always about deceit in a malicious sense. It's about divided focus, which, in relationships, often reveals itself first in communication patterns. Notice, too, the subtle overcompensation. Some women who are hiding emotional infidelity might suddenly become overly communicative in ways that feel unnatural. They may call or text more, but the energy behind it lacks authenticity. Their words are abundant, yet connection feels thin. This is because they are trying to maintain the illusion of closeness while managing secrecy. The psychological tension between wanting to protect a hidden aspect of themselves and keeping the relationship intact manifests in these inconsistent patterns. It's also important to understand the philosophical dimension here. Communication is a reflection of internal alignment. When someone is present, grounded, and committed, their communication reflects congruence. Words, tone, and timing align naturally. When there's internal conflict or divided attention, communication becomes fragmented. What may appear as minor irritations, avoidance, or defensiveness is actually the outward expression of inner misalignment. Detecting these shifts requires mindful observation. It's not about jumping to conclusions at the first delayed response or curt text. It's about recognizing a consistent pattern, a deviation from her usual rhythm. For example, if she once shared daily details of her life freely, but now offers only surface-level updates, this is a cue worth noticing. If questions about her day are met with vague answers or subtle deflection, that pattern is psychologically significant. The takeaway here is clear. Communication is not just words. It's a map of attention, focus, and emotional presence. When those begin to change, it is rarely accidental. The signals are subtle but consistent for those who know what to look for. Ignoring them or rationalizing them away leaves a gap in awareness, whereas observing them carefully offers early insight into potential issues. Ultimately, your role is not to accuse, but to observe and understand. Awareness allows you to respond intelligently rather than react emotionally. By noticing these early signs in communication, you gain clarity about the state of your relationship, the emotional energy invested, and the potential hidden dynamics at play. Pay attention, stay grounded, and trust your observations, because the truth often whispers first in the way someone communicates, long before it shouts in their actions. When we talk about uncovering female cheating signs, words tell only part of the story. The real truth often lives in the body, in the subtle, almost imperceptible cues that speak louder than any statement. Body language and microexpressions are the windows to unspoken thoughts and hidden emotions because the mind struggles to completely hide what it feels. Women, like men, carry internal conflicts in their physical expressions, and when someone is acting contrary to their emotions, their body invariably gives them away. Consider eye contact. In healthy, transparent interactions, there's a natural flow of looking and engaging. But when emotional distance creeps in, when someone is hiding something, the eyes become less reliable as a bridge of connection. She may avoid direct gaze, glance sideways more often, or blink more rapidly when certain topics arise. These micro-adjustments are not conscious. They are the body signaling discomfort or internal conflict. Eyes, after all, are connected directly to the limbic system, the seat of emotion, so subtle tension shows almost automatically. Facial microexpressions also reveal layers of internal struggle. A fleeting smirk, a quick tightening of the lips, or an imperceptible furrow in the brow often betrays feelings she may be unwilling or unable to articulate. These are rapid, involuntary expressions that occur in fractions of a second. They may appear when discussing her day, your relationship, or even in response to a casual comment. Trained observation of these expressions can provide critical insight into her internal emotional state, whether it's guilt, distraction, or emotional attachment elsewhere. Body posture is another critical signal. A woman who once sat relaxed and open in conversation may begin to cross her arms, lean away slightly, or adopt a more closed stance. Even subtle shifts, tilting away from you, creating distance with her body, or unconsciously positioning objects as barriers are manifestations of discomfort or hesitation. Philosophically, this makes sense. Humans naturally protect themselves when they feel psychologically divided. A body that subconsciously shields itself is often reflecting a mind that is conflicted or distracted. It's essential to note the psychological principle of incongruence. In relationships, words, tone, and body language ideally align. When there's incongruence, when she says everything's fine but her posture, eyes, or facial expressions suggest otherwise, this mismatch is a powerful red flag. Our subconscious minds pick up these inconsistencies even if our conscious mind doesn't immediately process them. Women, like all humans, find it difficult to fully mask the emotions that matter most to them. Emotional energy leaks through gestures, expressions, and posture. One key example is subtle defensiveness paired with casual conversation. She might answer routine questions with exaggerated calm, yet her hands fidget, her legs bounce, or she shifts uncomfortably in her seat. These micro-signals indicate that while the conscious mind is controlling the narrative, the subconscious mind is signaling a hidden tension. Over time, these repeated physical cues, though small individually, form a pattern that reveals more than any isolated comment ever. See. The lesson here is to become attuned to what cannot be spoken. Words can be rehearsed, excuses can be prepared, but the body is rarely deceived for long. Paying attention to eye contact, micro-expressions, and posture gives you a form of insight that transcends conversation. It taps directly into the emotional reality beneath the surface. Ultimately, understanding these physical cues allows you to navigate your relationship with clarity. You learn not only to detect hidden discomfort, but also to respect the psychological truths that emerge. Observing body language is not about suspicion. It's about awareness. The truth, as always, whispers first in movement, in gestures, and in the silent signals our minds cannot fully conceal. If you ignore these signals, you miss the most honest reflections of her inner world. Observe, reflect, and let the body reveal what words attempt to hide. One of the most telling signs that something is shifting beneath the surface in a relationship lies not in words or even body language alone, but in sudden, unexplained behavioral changes. Human beings are creatures of routine. We develop patterns over time that reflect comfort, emotional investment, and a sense of stability. When those patterns shift abruptly, it signals an internal recalibration, often tied to hidden emotions or experiences. In the context of female cheating signs, these changes are rarely random. They are reflections of psychological and emotional movement. Think about it. A woman who once shared her life openly may suddenly withhold details. She may become more secretive with her phone, protect social media activity, or avoid certain discussions she used to engage in willingly. Even subtle shifts, such as spending longer periods away from shared spaces or introducing new interests that seem disconnected from previous routines, can reveal an internal distraction. Behavior is a mirror of attention. When her focus is split, even unconsciously, the patterns that once defined her presence in the relationship begin to fragment. Appearance is another critical area to observe. A sudden change in grooming, style, or effort in personal presentation is rarely coincidental. While self-care and personal style can evolve for healthy reasons, abrupt shifts that coincide with secrecy or emotional withdrawal often point to a desire to impress someone outside the relationship. Psychologically, Humans seek validation and connection, and attention to appearance can be a subtle, nonverbal attempt to attract interest elsewhere. When combined with other behavioral cues, this becomes an important red flag. Technology, too, is a mirror for behavior shifts. A woman may suddenly become protective over her devices, change passwords, or engage in patterns of digital activity that feel inconsistent with previous habits. These changes are not necessarily proof in themselves, but they are signals that align with the psychological principle of divided attention. Our actions follow our emotional investment. When part of her emotional energy is allocated elsewhere, it manifests in behavior through subtle secrecy, modified routines, or altered responsiveness. Philosophically, it's essential to understand why behavior changes reveal truth. Human actions are rarely isolated. They are manifestations of inner states. Thoughts, emotions, and intentions inevitably influence routines, decisions, and habits. When someone is emotionally conflicted, guilty, or preoccupied, their behavior carries these imprints, often without conscious awareness. This is why paying attention to the broader context of changes is more informative than focusing on isolated actions. One late night, one delayed message, or one inconsistency is not enough to understand the story. Patterns over time, when analyzed thoughtfully, provide a window into emotional realities. Emotional withdrawal often accompanies these behavioral shifts. She may be present physically but absent emotionally. Conversations feel superficial, laughter is less spontaneous, and intimacy may wane. These are not always deliberate acts of deception. They are the natural consequence of an internal focus elsewhere. When a person's energy is invested in another emotional outlet, the relational engagement in the primary connection decreases. This is the quiet, often overlooked signal that something significant is happening beneath the surface. The takeaway is that behavioral changes are rarely isolated or accidental. They are reflections of the mind, signaling where attention, energy, and emotional investment are truly directed. By observing these patterns with clarity, you gain insight not through confrontation, but through understanding. Awareness of these shifts allows you to approach the relationship with intelligence, emotional intelligence, and grounded perception. Ultimately, sudden behavioral changes are not just quirks. They are subtle messages from the subconscious. When you learn to read them carefully, you begin to see the hidden psychological currents shaping the relationship. Awareness is power. Notice the shifts, reflect on their meaning, and let these patterns guide your understanding of emotional realities. Patterns, not words, reveal the truth. Another crucial window into the hidden dynamics of a relationship lies in verbal patterns. Specifically, the language a woman uses when she's emotionally conflicted. Words, tone, and phrasing reveal far more than surface meaning. They are vessels carrying subconscious truths. When a woman is hiding attraction elsewhere or entertaining emotional infidelity, the way she communicates often subtly shifts. It's not about catching her in a lie, but about noticing the inconsistencies between what she says and the underlying emotional tone that colors her words. Consider the subtle change in conversational engagement. A woman who once shared freely about her day, thoughts, and feelings may begin to speak in more generalized terms or offer vague answers. This verbal distancing is not random. The human mind tends to protect itself when it is torn between emotional loyalties. By speaking less specifically or avoiding deep disclosures, she unconsciously shields herself, maintaining a psychological barrier that keeps her private explorations hidden. Philosophically, language is a reflection of inner life. When the words tighten, the mind is subtly contracting around hidden truths. Tone is equally revealing. Listen to the fluctuations in pitch, hesitation, or abrupt changes in conversation flow. A voice that wavers, rushes, or becomes overly casual in certain contexts often betrays internal tension. Women, like all humans, struggle to fully mask emotions. Even if the words themselves seem innocuous, the tone carries a wealth of information about their emotional state. It's the difference between what is spoken and what is truly meant, an unintentional honesty that emerges through speech. Word choice provides another layer of insight. She may begin using more distancing language. We becomes I, or us becomes me. These shifts are subtle linguistic signals of psychological detachment. When someone's attention or emotional energy is being redirected, their language unconsciously aligns with that reality. Recognizing these linguistic patterns is key to understanding the unspoken. Words are the mind's outward manifestation. Inconsistency between language and previous relational norms often signals hidden dynamics. Even humor and casual comments can reveal concealed truths. A joke that seems offhanded, a teasing remark that carries underlying defensiveness, or comments that redirect attention away from relational intimacy can all be indicators of internal preoccupation. Humor is often a coping mechanism for managing discomfort. When she laughs at certain topics or sidesteps emotional depth through joking, it may be a subconscious strategy to maintain control over information and avoid revealing vulnerability. The philosophical depth here is profound. Language is not neutral. Every word, every pause, every nuance in tone is an echo of internal states. In relationships, we are constantly negotiating reality through speech. When emotional fidelity is divided, the subtle cracks appear in communication long before overt actions are visible. Understanding these cues allows you to see beyond surface conversation to the real currents beneath. Ultimately, the key is attentive listening, not just hearing, but interpreting with awareness. Notice patterns, not single phrases. Observe shifts in tone, choice of words, and engagement style. Awareness of these verbal cues gives you access to the truth she may not consciously articulate. Language, after all, is both shield and mirror. It can obscure and reveal simultaneously. The challenge and the power lies in discerning the hidden emotional truth behind the spoken word. In the end, communication is never merely transactional. It is an express, scion of inner reality. By attuning yourself to these verbal nuances, you gain insight into the subtle psychological landscape she inhabits. Words, when carefully observed, tell the story her actions and expressions may not fully disclose. Listen deeply, interpret thoughtfully, and let the language illuminate the truths her mind cannot conceal. Another revealing aspect of human behavior lies in how a woman manages her emotional availability, particularly in moments that require vulnerability or intimacy. When a woman is emotionally invested elsewhere or struggling with divided attention, her patterns of openness and receptivity often change. These changes are rarely conscious. They emerge from the subconscious, reflecting inner conflict between attraction, loyalty, and self-preservation. Understanding this dynamic requires observing the subtle ways she guards her emotional space and how her availability fluctuates in ways that reveal more than she intends. Emotional responsiveness is a critical indicator. A woman who once responded warmly to texts, calls, or invitations may begin to delay responses, provide minimal engagement, or seem distracted even when present. These shifts are not mere forgetfulness. They reflect the redirection of her emotional energy. The human psyche can only invest fully in so many directions at once. When part of that energy is focused elsewhere, the depth and quality of her responsiveness naturally diminish. Philosophically, this is a reflection of a universal truth. Attention is the currency of emotional investment, and where attention flows, energy follows. Physical presence also offers clues. A woman may still be nearby, but her engagement, eye contact, body orientation, physical closeness may subtly change. She might position herself in ways that create subtle distance or avoid prolonged, intimate gestures she previously offered freely. These behaviors are not necessarily conscious attempts to deceive. They are expressions of psychological self-regulation. When emotions are conflicted, the mind instinctively builds small barriers to manage internal tension, and physical cues often become the manifestation of that effort. Even in casual conversation, emotional withdrawal manifests through subtle cues. Her laughter may feel delayed or forced, her interest in shared topics may wane, or she may steer conversations towards safer, superficial topics rather than emotional depth. These shifts signal a protective mechanism. By limiting emotional exposure, she maintains a buffer against the vulnerability of being emotionally transparent while navigating complex feelings. Human behavior is rarely random, and emotional restraint is a conscious in the unconscious strategy to safeguard the self while managing conflicting desires. The philosophical principle here is that human behavior always seeks balance. When a woman experiences the pull of attraction outside the current relationship, or even deep internal conflict within it, her mind and body work in tandem to maintain equilibrium. Emotional withdrawal is a natural response to this tension. Recognizing these cues is not about suspicion for its own sake, but about understanding the invisible currents influencing her behavior. Observing emotional accessibility and engagement patterns provides a lens through which the truth of her internal state becomes visible. It's important to note that context matters. Emotional withdrawal alone is not a definitive sign of infidelity or betrayal. It is the pattern in combination with other subtle cues that paints the picture. Look for consistency over time. Are moments of detachment paired with secrecy, changes in routine, or shifts in verbal and physical communication? The interplay of these behavioral threads is what creates a reliable signal of underlying psychological dynamics. Ultimately, the awareness of emotional availability and its subtle fluctuations empowers you to understand the relationship on a deeper level. Attention to how she engages, how she allows herself to be emotionally present, and how those patterns shift offers insight into her hidden emotional reality. Emotional cues are often the language of the subconscious, and when interpreted carefully, they reveal truths that words alone cannot. In conclusion, emotional withdrawal is not merely a surface behavior, it is a window into her inner world. By observing the quality, consistency, and subtlety of her emotional engagement, you gain access to the psychological realities shaping her choices and behaviors. Emotional patterns speak volumes about attraction, conflict, and intention, and the more attuned you are to these signals, the clearer the underlying truths of the relationship become. Recognize them, reflect on them, and let them guide your understanding with clarity and insight. The final key to understanding hidden patterns in a woman's behavior, particularly when she is emotionally conflicted, lies in her subtle gestures of reassurance and attention. These are often small, almost imperceptible actions that, when observed carefully, reveal profound truths about her internal state. Women, like all humans, struggle to fully mask emotions, even when consciously attempting to maintain distance or hide feelings. Subconscious behaviors tend to slip through. These micro-gestures, small touches, fleeting smiles, nuanced eye contact, or spontaneous acts of thoughtfulness, offer windows into what she truly feels beneath the surface. One critical aspect is the timing and context of her attention. When a woman goes out of her way to engage with you, even in brief or seemingly minor ways, it signals the underlying pull of emotion. Investment. For instance, she may remember small details you mentioned in passing, respond to your jokes with unexpected warmth, or check in during moments when she could easily be preoccupied elsewhere. These moments are not mere coincidence. They reflect the subtle force of attraction and care, operating even when she consciously attempts to maintain emotional distance. Philosophically, it demonstrates the mind's inability to fully suppress what it values. Attention naturally gravitates toward what matters. Micro-gestures are equally telling in physical interaction. A brief touch on the arm, a hand lightly brushing against yours, or positioning herself closer than necessary are unconscious signals of desire and emotional connection. The human body communicates truths the conscious mind may attempt to suppress. When she fears falling in love or confronting her own vulnerability, these gestures become her mind's compromise, expressing attachment without fully verbalizing it. Recognizing the language of the body is as important as interpreting words. Together, they form a more complete understanding of intention and emotion. Consistency in these small acts amplifies their significance. Occasional gestures can be accidental, but repeated patterns of subtle attention point to a deeper emotional truth. If she continually seeks moments to reassure you, to connect, or to signal care, even while maintaining a protective exterior, this is a strong indicator that her emotions are engaged, regardless of what she says or consciously chooses to reveal. Behavioral consistency is the hallmark of authenticity. Patterns speak louder than isolated actions. Another layer to observe is the interplay between her protective behaviors and these micro signs of care. A woman may consciously withdraw, appear distracted, or engage in defensive humor, yet intersperse these with fleeting acts of warmth. This dynamic tension is a psychological signature of someone grappling with internal conflict. Her mind oscillates between self-protection and emotional attraction. Philosophically, it highlights the duality of human nature. Desire and caution coexist, often producing subtle but telling patterns of behavior. Understanding these gestures requires mindful observation and a measured approach. It's not about overanalyzing every glance or touch, but rather about discerning the overarching pattern. Emotional truth rarely reveals itself in a single moment. It emerges over time through repeated, consistent behaviors. By paying attention to the accumulation of subtle signals, you gain insight into her authentic feelings, even when her words and conscious actions suggest otherwise. Ultimately, the significance of microgestures lies in their ability to bypass conscious defenses and reveal the subconscious heart. While a woman may consciously attempt to maintain distance, these small acts betray her true emotional orientation. The power of observation allows you to perceive the depth of her attachment and attraction without needing explicit confirmation. In conclusion, the small, often overlooked gestures of attention, reassurance, and subtle care are profoundly revealing. They offer a lens into her subconscious mind, highlighting the emotional realities she may fear confronting openly. By tuning into these signals, you gain clarity on her authentic feelings, understanding not only what she does, but why she does it. Recognize these cues, reflect on their meaning, and allow them to guide your perception with insight, patience, and awareness, because the truth of the heart often whispers quietly rather than shouting loudly.